I hope that you guys are looking forward to a happy holiday, whatever you celebrate, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, the winter solstice, Yule, because these people that I'm about to talk about are not going to have a very merry holiday. And a lot of the information about this particular situation is not really in English. I mean, some of it is, but it doesn't really give the full context. So I took an Instagram post that is in Spanish, and I had my friend Sydney, huge shout out to her, for translating the entire post. And it gives, for the most part, the general context of the situation, plus a call to action. And of course, that call to action is where y'all come in. I need y'all to help out here. I will leave both the Spanish and the English versions of this post in the description, and I'm gonna kind of be reading from it verbatim to kind of give the general context. Before we even get into this post, we need to talk about street vendors. These are low-income families who are marginally people of color, mainly from the Latino community, and they serve food. They serve different kinds of food. It could be tacos, it could be burritos, it could be elote, sometimes candy, sometimes fruit with tahini sprinkled on it, sometimes snow cone with flavors on it, sometimes more comfort food like hot dogs or hamburgers. But either way, the bottom line here is that these are working class families who make a more honest living than law enforcement and billionaires. Because when you pay these people to buy a bouquet of flowers off the side of the freeway or whatever, the money goes to the family. So that way they could put food on the table. So that way they could pay their rent, pay their bills, sustain a living. Because we all know that the pandemic definitely did not do any of the working class any favors here, especially when it comes to livability. Of course, street vendors have existed prior to the pandemic. This, I would argue, is a non-issue. Out of the top 10 things we need to focus on in terms of how the government should be spending its money or putting energy towards anything, street vendors is like not even on the list. It's like a made up issue. It's an invented issue. But I remember being homeless in Los Angeles, and I remember seeing signs that specifically targeted vendors, saying no vendors allowed in this area. And I knew for a fact that this was going to become a problem that was going to escalate, and unfortunately I was proven right. It's an invented issue, and it's gotten so bad that people who were the protesters in defense of these street vendors are now in jail too. This is where I'm going to start reading from the post that was translated into English for y'all. And of course, I'm not gonna read every single detail. I want y'all to read it for yourself. Urgent call to action to the community. Exercising your civil right is not a crime. And that is correct. There's nothing wrong with exercising your basic civil right to protest, to assemble, to free speech. It's defended by the Constitution. Speaking of the Constitution, that won't be the only constitutional violation that takes place within this story, unfortunately. This begins to call for a demand to an investigation on the San Bernardino Sheriff Department for their retaliation against the Justice 8 activists. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, one of 5 police agencies in the collaboration for the plot called Operation Responsibility, has a large history of misconduct, multiple civil rights violations, officer involved in shootouts, lawsuits for racial discrimination, tampering with evidence, torture, and a history of utilizing a particular surveillance technology known as Stingray in order to be way more aggressive against activists. Because my friend translated this post for me, I understand that there might be a chance that somebody would say that this is called Operation Accountability and not Operation Responsibility. Even if it is called Operation Accountability, I think this is a moot point, mainly because the point of all of these protests is to hold the government officials and police accountable in light of harassment of street vendors. It's a very I know you are, but what am I community response. And so it begins to ask this primary question that I think is very well founded. How can the community trust that the investigation that resulted in the arrest of the Justice 8 activists will be carried out in an ethical and impartial way towards the San Bernardino Police Department. We can't trust the police to investigate themselves. At this point, it begins to highlight some statistics on the San Bernardino County Sheriff Department. Out of 662 reports of civil misconduct, only 9% were in favor of the civilians. Out of 204 reports of discrimination, 0% were in favor of the civilians. Out of 81 reports of misconduct in prisons, only 4 were in favor of the civilians. This is such a terrible batting average for the police and their relationship with the broader community in San Bernardino County. It shows that the police don't really care about what the citizens think of them or what the citizens think of their actions, because it is a repeated trend of misconduct and discrimination and excessive use of force and stronghold surveillance that really alienate the people of San Bernardino County from the function of the state. This is where the post begins to highlight a bit of a timeline. In December of 2019, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department was one of the accused and sued by the Department of Justice of the United States for violating provisions to the equal living of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. On the 15th of December in 2022, the prosecutor then called for a historic agreement that resolved the racial discrimination lawsuit after reaching an agreement of $1 million. The suit accused the sheriff and others for participating in a pattern of practice in discrimination against Black and Latino communities and people in the city of Hesperia.
We got intel. That's short for a word I don't know.
Intelligence?
I don't believe so, no.
The next point says, in 2022, the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department was sued again for the illegal use from the Department of the Surveillance Technology Stingray in covert operations to spy on their citizens.
Do not be alarmed. Continue swimming naked. Oh, come on. Continue. Come on. Oh.
In February of 2023, the supervisor of the county reached an agreement in a civil rights suit of $500,000 in wrongful incarceration lawsuit of a school janitor that was then absolved of the 10 charges by a jury. And according to the plaintiff's lawyer, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and the District Tax Office have tampered with evidence and incurred misconduct. So as you can see, the San Bernardino Department has a really brutal history of very draconian policies. But that's not even about the street vendors here. That's just regular citizens dealing with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and their fucking authoritarian shenanigans. This is where we start talking about the Justice 8, because during the last couple of years, the activists have been advocating actively in the region of the Inland Empire for a series of issues, ranging from police brutality to draconian municipal policies against street vendors. This is where it starts to come together. And in the last couple of months, they brought to light many incidences, like the case of the Upland police officer, Nick Peelman, whose daughter and her friends were caught on video verbally abusing and accosting a street vendor in San Diego. Later, that same officer was expelled for shooting Christian Rodriguez in the back, who was unarmed. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not showing you like the videos of this stuff, I've seen it. A lot of these cases, especially with that Upland police officer and his daughter, actually were on Instagram and they went viral. And a lot of people on the internet are starting to take notice of this activity against street vendors. One of the Justice 8 is this guy, Edin who is one of those people who were amplifying these videos of street vendors being harassed and robbed and abused on the street by various strangers, etc., so on and so forth. He's kind of a key player in all of this, and I've actually seen his videos out in the wild before, so Hopefully when he's out of jail, he can resume making these videos and making the community vividly aware of the constant harassment street vendors and people of color unfortunately endure throughout Southern California. The use of his platform is something I'm a huge fan of because it is holding people within his own community accountable, especially when the law and law enforcement fails to do so. And I gotta say, as somebody who does watch his content sometimes, I gotta imagine just how stressful hosting a channel like this can truly be. Because street vendors, at the end of the day, they deal with a lot of harassment, not even just from police, but from a lot of racist people, a lot of ignorant people, a lot of just very overall hateful people who have nothing better to do than to start problems. And we're seeing that every time these vendors are harassed, the police step in and they harass further the victim in this situation. They escalate it. It continues to say that tensions kept escalating when the activists criticized Mayor Aquanetta Warren for her publicly anti-immigrant discourse and protested in front of her home. This is very confrontational, but often necessary, especially when politicians and big, powerful billionaire people don't listen to the demands of the people. And of course, these activists were again arrested for illegal reunion, and the police never followed up the protocol to give the people time to leave and an adequate exit without obstacles, not to mention, Miranda rights. There's something to note, and that is Mayor Warren did try to issue a restraining order against one of the activists, to which the judge denied it. So the law is not even on the side of the state here. The law actually disagrees with law enforcement and the mayor here. These activists are like 150% in the right to do what they are doing. Even if it is disruptive, even if it strikes fear into the rich and powerful, it still is within their constitutional right to do so. Moving right along, on December 7th, a group of street vendors presented into a federal lawsuit against the city of Fontana, which is the city that the mayor, Warren, is governing over. The street vendors presented a case that the city was issuing very, very, very racist and discriminatory practices and used the police as a means to execute these discriminatory practices, specifically targeting the street vendors. And a lot of this resulted in the closing of people's businesses, constant harassment, and just completely disposing and trashing of their inventory. This is the level of bullshit we're seeing from the police in the San Bernardino County. And so then a week later from this incident on December 14th, the day before my birthday, nothing's sacred to these people, arrest warrants were issued for 8 of the activists. And those people are the Justice 8. And they are currently, right now, sitting in jail. And this is where all that exhibition that we talked about comes into play here. The San Bernardino Police Department has a history of tampering with evidence, of using spying technology known as Stingray on its own citizens, of not being completely transparent, interfering with the investigations involved here. So again, can we really trust the police here to do the right thing, especially since they have already arrested activists who are expressing their First Amendment right? I don't think so, especially with this whole history of racist discrimination. Not to mention, interfering with these investigations is against the federal law. So there's been some interesting development in this particular case in the court proceeding that took place on December 18th of 2023 in the Superior Court of California in the county of San Bernardino. One of the Justice 8, who is Edin and Amorado, asked for a lawyer, especially since the lawyer was on their way to the courthouse. The lawyer was running late, and this was the response of the judge. Well, sir, this was to be called at 8:30. It's 8:38 and there's no attorney here. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. Enter not guilty pleas to all of these charges. This is a violation of the 6th Amendment, which gives people in court the right to a lawyer and the right to an impartial jury. This is beginning to sound like the Scottsboro Boys case, if anybody have ever read To Kill a Mockingbird or ever listened to Leadbelly. And what is incredibly messed up about this whole thing is that the next court date is December 26th.
Today was a huge miscarriage of justice because not only were these criminal charges filed against the Justice 8 and Mr. Enamorado, there were no bail holds placed. Not even murderers have no bail holds. Not even people accused of murder have no bail holds. That means that they cannot even post bail. They are in jail without even the possibility of bail.
Which means that not only are these people going to be spending their Christmas in jail for, defending the community, but they're going to have to deal with some major bullshit in the coming days, which means that there's not a lot of time to act now. So my friends, this is where I'm gonna need your help. And all of these calls to action are from this document that I am sharing now. They want you to file a complaint to the Department of Justice, and there'll be a link in the document in the description for you to go do that. They want you to ask the FBI to file an investigation with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And of course, they want you to do the same with the Attorney General of the state of California. And this is because the Attorney General is supposed to represent the legal interests of the people of California, especially with these draconian policies and these draconian practices from the police department in San Bernardino County. There should be some correction involved here. So not only are there going to be links to this stuff, but there's actually a template already written out for you. And again, translated by Sydney. Thank you very much, homie, for you to file this case into each of these departments for an investigation. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is the media covering this story.
One of them is a well-known activist in Southern California, and we know that he has helped many people down on their luck. For years, Edin Alex Enamorado has been a fierce defender of street vendors who are attacked or racially discriminated against.
Abolish! Abolish!
But now, Enamorado and 7 others are accused of breaking the law during organized protests.
They use racism to threaten and intimidate their victims, causing them to get on their knees to beg for forgiveness while still assaulting them.
This stupid fucking man who benefits off of our fucking taxes is lying through his fucking teeth as we just went over the absolute draconian history of racist violence committed by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Do you want to say that again, dipshit?
They use racism to threaten and intimidate their victims. Racism to threaten and intimidate their victims. Racism, threaten, intimidate. What this group does is not protected by the First Amendment.
How? Because earlier in this news broadcast, it states that they were arrested for several felony charges, including assault, while providing no evidence of this in this report.
The San Bernardino sheriff says helping street vendors and victims of attack isn't the real motive for Enamorado and the 7 others.
This group manipulates videos and photos on social media in an attempt to make them look like they're protectors of underrepresented people. This group is not about substance for the human condition, but rather clickbait for cash.
I love making fun of cops sometimes because they say some of the stupidest shit ever.
Mr. Enamorado and his colleagues do not make money out of any of their posts. They're demonetized. They're not influencers. They don't make money out of any of their posts. So the fact that the sheriff, the top elected law enforcement official in this county, goes up there and makes a blatant liar, a false claim, and a clear misrepresentation, that shows you exactly what they are doing in this case. They haven't even done the proper investigation, and it is clearly done to defame the Justice 8 and Mr. Enamorado.
Even if we're going to entertain that this is somehow a true statement, we need to remember that people lie and make money on lies all the time. You can look at the Daily Wire, Fox News, Blair White, Onision. All of these people make loads of money off of lying, and you're just making excuses to harass street vendors. Of course, lying is definitely manipulative and evil and extremely messed up, but it's still protected by the Constitution. There's no asterisk where the Constitution says the First Amendment protects your free speech unless you are lying. And again, that is assuming that he is lying. This is an assumption that the police officer is making. And yeah, shit online is overly sensationalized. Guess what? Every Sylvester Stallone movie, every Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, every fucking Hopalong Cassidy movie, all of these people have made sensationalist content throughout history. And a lot of it was for the sake of shock, was for the sake of grabbing the viewer's attention. It's clickbait. Also, yeah, seeing vendors get assaulted like this is gonna make people mad because it's happening in their community.
Over what? Protest? Over what? Speaking up for the disenfranchised? Over what? For representing a community?
Edin is not manipulating anybody. You're the one manipulating the audience here, especially since you have a track record as a department of doing exactly that. Nobody trusts you, dude. Nobody should trust you. I'm gonna put hashtags here for you to follow because I want you to actively be following this situation, especially if you're in the Los Angeles area. Lastly, I want to just echo a call to action from the People's City Council of Los Angeles. The next hearing is going to be on December 26th at 8:30 a.m. in Victorville, the courthouse. And they want you to pack the court with as many community members, auditors, and media people as possible. Also, if you feel like helping and you're not within the LA area, Edin's lawyer has a bail fund for them, and I'll put a link in the description for that as well. What I hope to see from this is that these people get released from jail back to their families, hopefully before Christmas. And more importantly, I hope that there are protections for street vendors and that there are no more draconian policies against street vendors. Street vendors make a more honest living than billionaires and law enforcement. Yet it is law enforcement who continues to get funding from billionaires and our taxpayer dollars. So basically we're giving them free money. They're mooching. They are mooching our money. And if cops really want to garner some sympathy from the community, they can go out and get a real job. Not this stupid fucking Paw Patrol shit.